Number 5. The anthropology students who definitely failed. In 1991, a team of anthropologists decided they were going to be the ones to crack the code. They'd studied previous contact attempts, learned from past mistakes, and came prepared with gifts, coconuts specifically, because apparently the universal language is tropical fruit. They approached the island slowly, deliberately, making themselves non-threatening. And it actually worked, sort of. The Sentinelese came down to the beach, took the coconuts, and for a brief moment, there was genuine peaceful contact. Anthropologists around the world were thrilled. First successful interaction in modern history. This was going to be a breakthrough. Then the Sentinelese did something that the researchers definitely didn't put in their grant proposal. They turned around, broke the coconuts open, ate them, and then immediately started making aggressive gestures that universally translate to, okay, thanks for the snacks, now leave. No follow-up questions, no cultural exchange, no let's be friends moment, just appreciated the delivery, don't let the beach hit you on the way out. The anthropologists tried a few more times with similar results. Gifts accepted, visitors aggressively dismissed. Eventually, the Indian government realized they were basically running an extremely dangerous fruit delivery service and shut the whole operation down. The psychology here is fascinating because it reveals something uncomfortable about anthropological contact. The assumption that isolated people want contact is built into the entire framework. We approach with gifts as a universal peace offering, assuming that kindness and generosity will naturally lead to relationship building. But the Sentinelese essentially said, we understand you're trying to be nice, and we'll take your stuff, but that doesn't mean we're friends. They separated the transaction from the relationship, which is actually sophisticated social reasoning. They're not naive. They're not confused. They're just uninterested. It's like when someone keeps trying to chat you up at the gym and you take their offered water bottle, but still put your headphones back in. The anthropologists learned an important lesson that day. Consent applies to civilizations too, and no thanks is a complete sentence. Basically, the Sentinelese invented thanks but no thanks about 60,000 years before we had a phrase for it. Number 4. The island that kills on contact. There's an island off the coast of India that's so dangerous. Approaching it is literally illegal. Not frowned upon illegal, not please don't illegal. We're talking the Indian Navy will physically stop you and possibly arrest you illegal. North Sentinel Island sits in the Bay of Bengal like a beautiful tropical postcard that happens to be signed, stay away or die. And here's the thing, it's not guarded because of chemical weapons, buried treasure, or some secret government experiment. It's guarded because of the people who live there, and they've made their stance on visitors extremely clear for the past 60,000 years. Absolutely not. The Sentinelese are one of the last uncontacted tribes on Earth, and they've perfected the art of the hostile, no soliciting sign. Every single attempt at contact has ended with arrows flying, and not the Cupid kind. In 2006, 2 fishermen accidentally drifted too close to the island. They were killed immediately, their bodies buried in shallow graves on the beach as a rather unambiguous return-to-sender message. In 2018, an American missionary named John Allen Chow decided he'd be the one to finally make contact and spread his religion. Despite multiple warnings, legal barriers, and the fishermen who dropped him off literally telling him this was a terrible idea, he went anyway. He was killed within hours. The Indian government didn't even attempt to retrieve his body because doing so would require, going to the murder island. But here's what makes this psychologically fascinating. The Sentinelese aren't just randomly violent. They're protecting themselves with a strategy that's worked for millennia. Their isolation has kept them alive while countless other tribes were wiped out by disease, colonization, or forced assimilation. Their immune systems have never been exposed to common diseases like the flu or measles, illnesses that would be inconvenient for you but catastrophic for them. One peaceful contact could trigger a plague, so every arrow they shoot is essentially their version of a restraining order, backed by 60,000 years of evolutionary survival instinct. Basically, they've looked at the modern world and collectively decided hard pass, and honestly, given what they'd be signing up for, can you blame them? Number 3. The helicopter incident that changed everything. In 2004, a massive tsunami slammed into the Indian Ocean, killing over 200,000 people across multiple countries. In the aftermath, the Indian government sent a helicopter to check on North Sentinel Island, half expecting to find the entire tribe wiped out. What they found instead was a lone Sentinelese warrior, standing on the beach, bow drawn, firing arrows at a military helicopter, not cowering in fear, not waving for help, actively trying to shoot down modern aircraft with wooden arrows, like some kind of Stone Age anti-air defense system. The pilot got the message and left. This moment is psychologically staggering when you break it down. This guy just survived one of the deadliest natural disasters in human history. His island was hit by waves that destroyed concrete buildings on the mainland, and his first response to seeing potential rescuers wasn't relief, it was aggression. No hesitation, no curiosity, just pure, concentrated, get off my lawn energy directed at a machine he'd probably never seen before and couldn't possibly understand. From his perspective, a giant metal bird monster appeared in the sky, making unholy noises, and his immediate tactical assessment was, I can take it. But here's what this tells us about the Sentinelese psychology. They've developed a threat response so deeply ingrained that it overrides even curiosity and survival instinct. Most humans, when faced with something completely outside their frame of reference, experience a moment of freeze. Our brains buffer while trying to process the impossible. Not these guys. Their cultural programming is so strong that stranger equals danger isn't a thought process. It's a reflex. They've essentially evolved a social immune system that treats all outsiders like pathogens, which, given that actual pathogens would kill them, is horrifyingly rational. The military didn't change their approach after this incident because they realized something important. These people don't want to be saved. They want to be left alone. And sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is honor someone's clearly stated boundary, even when that boundary is enforced with arrows. Number 2, the genetic time capsule nobody can open. From a scientific perspective, the Sentinelese represent something incredibly rare, a completely isolated genetic population that's been separated from the rest of humanity for potentially 60,000 years. That's not a typo. 60,000 years. To put that in perspective, they've been isolated longer than writing has existed, longer than agriculture, longer than the pyramids by a factor of about 12. Geneticists are absolutely salivating over the potential research opportunities here, and simultaneously pulling their hair out because they can't access any of it. It's like discovering a perfectly preserved time capsule from the Paleolithic era, except the time capsule is full of living people who will kill you if you try to open it. The scientific questions are legitimately fascinating. How is their genetic diversity held up over millennia of isolation with a population estimated at only 50 to 400 people? That's dangerously small for long-term genetic viability. Most species would have inbred themselves into extinction. Have they developed unique adaptations to their specific island environment? What can their immune systems tell us about human disease resistance before global pandemics started shuffling pathogens around? What about their language, their social structure, their tool-making techniques that have remained relatively unchanged for tens of thousands of years? These are questions that could reshape our understanding of human evolution and cultural development. But here's the ethical nightmare keeping anthropologists up at night. Obtaining answers would require exactly the kind of contact that could exterminate the very people you're trying to study. It's a catch-22 wrapped in a moral dilemma and deep-fried in frustration. You can't study them without potentially killing them, and if they die, you've destroyed the only evidence of whatever you were trying to study in the first place. Some scientists have suggested collecting DNA samples from arrows that land on beaches or analyzing satellite imagery to track population changes, which is essentially the academic equivalent of being a stalker, but calling it non-invasive research. The military guards don't just protect the Sentinelese from physical contact, they protect them from becoming lab rats in the world's most ethically compromised science experiment. Basically, we've created the only museum exhibit in history where the artifacts are people, admission is forbidden, and the security system is operated by the exhibits themselves, using weapons from the Stone Age. Number 1. The colonial history that explains everything. Here's where this story gets dark, and suddenly the Sentinelese response to outsiders makes a lot more sense. In 1867, a British merchant ship called the Nineveh wrecked off the coast of North Sentinel Island. The survivors made it to shore and were immediately attacked by the islanders. The British colonial government, never once to take a hint, sent an armed rescue party that was also attacked. They eventually retrieved the survivors by force, fighting off the Sentinelese with guns. But here's what really happened next. The British didn't just leave. They decided to study the island, which in Victorian colonizer language meant abduct people and see what happens. An officer named Maurice Vidal Portman led an expedition that landed on the island with a large armed group and kidnapped an elderly couple and 4 children. He took them back to Port Blair, the Colonial Administrative Center, probably expecting some kind of anthropological breakthrough or a chance to civilize them. Instead, the elderly couple immediately got sick and died. Turns out, when you kidnap people with no immunity to modern diseases and stick them in a colonial town, bad things happen. Shocking, right? Portman, suddenly realizing he'd accidentally committed manslaughter in the name of science, panicked and returned the 4 children to the island along with some gifts, presumably as an apology for the whole killed your grandparents thing. Now imagine you're a Sentinelese person who witnessed this. Strangers with incomprehensible technology and weapons showed up, kidnapped your family members, and returned some of them without the elders, probably sick and traumatized, babbling about impossible things they'd seen. What lesson would you take from this? That outsiders are friendly? Or that outsiders are dangerous kidnappers who kill people? This wasn't just a bad first impression. It was a cultural trauma that likely got passed down through generations as a cautionary tale. Remember what happened when we trusted the boat people? Grandma and Grandpa died. The Sentinelese aren't irrationally hostile. They're responding rationally to a documented historical pattern of outsiders bringing death. The military now guards the island partly because the government recognizes that colonial contact literally killed people, and they're trying not to repeat that mistake. Basically, the Sentinelese have a 150-year-old grudge that's completely justified, and we're shocked they're still holding it.